hereby call the special meeting to order. Please allow me to confirm those members, staff, and anticipated participants are present and can hear me. I'll ask the moderator to confirm the digital identity of each of the aforementioned participants and affirmative identification. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. John Leszewski, here. Dane Krzyzewski. No Dane yet. Okay, Steve Kirsch.
Here.
Rebecca O'Donnell.
Here.
Donaldin Wales.
Here.
Okay, staff. We've got Ron Bonovsky.
Mayor.
Heidi Mead.
Here.
First Selectman Ken Kellogg.
Here.
We've got Superintendent Joe Cobsa.
Here.
We've got Jack Ciccolini.
Here.
Jack and Donna Lane.
Yeah.
Terrific. Thank you all. I declare we have a quorum. Call this meeting to order. The agenda and any related materials have been posted and can be seen on the town's website, www.monroe.org, for public inspection. This meeting is being conducted remotely in compliance with Section 1 of Governor Lamont's Executive Order 7B, dated March 14th, 2020, using GoToMeeting electronic conference technology. Using this technology, the public shall participate in real time via computer, tablet, smartphone, or telephone using the information access set forth on the meeting agenda. Please be advised that each meeting has unique participation, so please be assured you have accessed the correct meeting. Notice is hereby given that only 250 participants may access this remote electronic public meeting at one time. Access to this meeting using this technology is granted solely by the technology provider on a first access basis and is not controlled by the town of Monroe. While it is anticipated we will not exceed this participation limit for this meeting, should it appear we are approaching said limit so that any member of the public is denied access to this meeting, I, as chairman, reserve the right to adjourn and continue the meeting at a later date using technology appropriate to ensure all members of the public may participate. Please take note of the following regarding this remote electronic public meeting. This meeting is being conducted in real time. This meeting is open to the public, and any member of the public may listen or view this meeting anonymously. That this meeting is being recorded, and while we ask you mute your microphone unless recognized to speak, that anything you say, do, or display on your screen may become part of the recording. That the recording shall be posted to the town's website within 7 days. That the recording should be made available to the public within a reasonable time. The meeting should follow standard parliamentary procedures. However, I ask all participants to follow these rules. In addition, please mute your microphone so as to reduce background noise at any time you are not speaking. Prior to speaking on each occasion, each speaker should clearly state their name and title for the record. The use of the chat feature is prohibited and will not be considered during the meeting if in use. As set forth in the agenda, the meeting will not feature public participation. All right. Review
Mike,
of the minutes.
Mike, before you go further, it appears that Dane has joined. If you want
Great.
to confirm that.
Hey, Dane.
Hi, how's it going? Sorry for
Good.
waiting.
That's okay. You made it. Steve Pache sneaking in. There you go.
No, I
Thank
wanted
you,
to make
Steve.
sure he got his name was recorded for the record.
All right. Review of the minutes and voting record for March 18th, 2021.
Mr.
Well,
Chairman,
make a
Steve
motion.
Kirsch, Board of Finance, I move to approve the meeting minutes and voting record for March 18, 2021.
We have a second.
Rebecca O'Donnell, second.
Any discussion? All right. Hearing none, we'll just go through. John Leszewski.
Hi.
Dane.
Aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Rebecca.
Aye.
Donaldin.
Aye.
And myself. Aye. Very good. Thank you. All right. We are going to get right into our work tonight. We have the Board of Ed. I'm going to basically turn it over to Superintendent Cobsa, and Donna can jump in as be needed. We did send over some overview questions a couple weeks ago, so I'm going to just let him run through that, go through all of those, and then if there's additional questions or areas we want to discuss, certainly the floor will be wide open for everybody. So, Joe, thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks everybody. I do have Donna's obviously. I know Nick is on a bunch of the administrators are on. Obviously, Ron has worked with me pretty closely on this throughout the entire process. Jack, Sheila, Darlene, Jen. I see Mike Crowley on as well. So, I would just, to any of them, if there's a piece that I miss, which is easy to do, feel free to jump right in. And I think most of the talking will probably be done by Ron and I, based on some of the questions that you guys have given us ahead of time. So I'll jump right into those for you. Just looking at the questions that were sent ahead of time, and I'll just read them. I don't know if the public has them, but some of the questions that were sent ahead of time. The first one was an inquiry about a capital request for the Ford F-350 pickup with plow and sander. It was to the tune of about $60,000. And I think the question was, could this need be met by assistance from town public works plowing and helping out with the driveways? Ron reached out to both the town director of public works and our board of ed director of facilities. And they both agreed. The town, suggested that they would need to add capacity to fill the needs of the school as it is now. Doing the roads keeps them pretty bogged down. So, at this time, without adding capacity in public works, they didn't think they had the manpower to do that right now. I do believe and I'll talk about the capital plan, the capital budget in a little bit. But I do believe that 350 was actually pushed out a year, if I'm not mistaken. So it's looking like that would be a next year purchase, not necessarily a this year purchase. And if anyone has any clarifying stuff, just please feel free to jump right in, and if not, I'll just keep rolling.
Yeah, you're on a roll. Keep going.
The second one is the Fairchild Wheeler Magnet School. I don't know if we think we pretty much addressed that one last week. Mike, were you guys comfortable with that? I didn't have anything new beyond what was said last week.
Yeah, no, I think we handled that last week. I think everybody seemed comfortable with the idea. We'll just update some of the numbers to see what the effect on that will be. But I, still feel very strongly that taking it out of this year's operating makes perfect sense because it's got nothing to do with this year's budget.
Okay. I'll turn the next pieces over to Ron right now. The next question was on the medical insurance increase of 10.65%, and the question being, is this a final number, an estimate? And if the former, then when would a final number be made available?
Okay.
Yeah, so that was a projection that was used at that time. We have a better number right now. We're hoping to get a better number within the next 2 weeks, but we may not. So
there's a chance we're going to just have what we've got now, Ron, is what you're saying?
There is that chance, Mike.
Okay.
So what number are you looking at right now? Number we talked about the other day, 4, 5, 6%, something like that.
Correct, Steve.
What number does the board or the superintendent feel is do you all feel is the right number for you guys as a percent? What are you comfortable with?
Who was that? That question was directed at myself and Joe.
At you and Joe, please.
Yeah. So this actually has tentacles on the town side too, because the health insurance plans, both the town and board of it are in the state plan. My suggestion would be in the 5 to 6% range. For a little.
I think that actually makes sense, right?
contingency.
Right. What was the most, just so everybody's aware, what was the most recent estimate was 4 something, right?
4% over the rates that became effective on October 1st.
Got it. Okay. Very good.
Ron, you want to address the payroll taxes? The Medicare miscellaneous account was up $100,000.
Sure, it was. If you look at, and I think this question came from John. I'm not sure, but so if you look at the detailed budget report, I think it was page 13 in the comparison report that you probably got that from John. There's another line that was going the other way. It was just, we budgeted the stipends that are budgeted for the district are not calculated within the payroll calculation and have to be pulled in manually. And we dumped them into the miscellaneous payroll account as opposed to the central office payroll account, which was where they were last year. So it was just a bad comparison for those two accounts. That makes sense. So one account was down, I think 73,000. The other was up 103.
Got it. So it's a presentation issue more than a big increase.
Yeah, and I proofed out the payroll taxes separate from the payroll projections and came within $1,400.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense, Ron. Thanks.
Ron, I'll give you one last one, then hopefully I can jump back in on some of these. The next question was about wages. Overall wages were up 5.08%, but employee benefits up 7.91%.
Yeah, and again, the driver there was the medical insurance.
Yeah.
Which is projected, it's projected in the budget currently at north, I think it's 10% year over year, 8% over the current rates. So that's the driver there, John.
That makes sense. Thank you very much.
The next question was looking for a projected cost per student for 21-22, and I really want to caution the numbers I'm going to use right now, because it's really not how the state determines the per pupil expenditures. And I do have the per pupil expenditures from the state from the last 5 years. Obviously, we don't have next year's because it's not next year yet. But what we did for this, and I think Mike in our conversations, we're just looking for a trying to find
Just a benchmark, yeah.
So
A trend, exactly.
And so, my biggest fear is that someone's going to take these numbers and then compare, look at what state reported in another town, because these will be higher than what the actual per pupil expenditures are, or the net current.
Yeah, I mean, I know the state does, fairly in-depth calculation and subtracts certain things out and does all that. I was just looking for let's just take the whole number and divide by the number of students, and at least it's consistent for our numbers. And I know it's not comparable to the way the state's calculating it.
Exactly.
So I agree with you 100% for the record. There you go.
Yeah. I didn't want someone to take these and then be like, oh my gosh, what we're spending. Because it's definitely not apples to apples. So we did exactly, exactly what you suggested, and just took the total, budget for the last 5 or 6 years and divided it by the number of students that we've had for our October 1 enrollments. What I did for next year is I took a trend based on what's happening with. I know there's another question coming up on enrollment. Just kind of the trend over the past 2 years, and if that trend holds true, giving us some kind of a projection of where enrollment might be for October 1 of 2021. So, going back to 2017-18, about 17,552. The next year, $18,007. The next year, $18,255. The next year, $18,403, and then projecting out the way I just suggested, looking at $19,243. I can give you also, I don't know if you want it, Mike, the state calculation for the last, for those corresponding years as well. So it gives you, if you want another trend to work with. Do you want that, or are you comfortable with this?
I'm comfortable with just what you gave us. I mean, I think that makes perfect sense. I mean, again, I think it's really hard, and I always warn people against trying to do this. Is trying to compare us to Westport, to Hartford, to every district is very different, and I think it's really hard to compare apples to oranges, and we're just going to get in trouble there. I think we've got to look at what we want to accomplish in this town and I'm just looking for a consistent measure. And I think that's what you're giving us, which is great.
Okay. Ron, did you want to walk through the estimated salary projections for the next 2 contract years?
Sure, Joe. The first year projection is actually in the budget. So the 20, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but I think this was directed at just closed contracts, and I think the only closed contract we have for 22-23 which is 2 years out is the teachers. So which is obviously probably the biggest budget driver just based on pure number of teachers.
Yeah, I mean, just so everybody understands, what I was trying to look at is understanding that, obviously what we did last year affected fairly dramatically what we're doing this year. I just want us to looking at, okay, what we do this year obviously is going to affect and just give us a little bit of a look forward, which is, a normal budgeting process with any company or any business. It's not something we've done very well in the past. We've talked about doing it, but I do want us to at least do a little forward looking to understand what we're contractually obligated to if we just kept the same levels.
Right. So having said that, Mike, again, this is a projection on a projection, right? So there's a variables here. But we're looking at a percentage increase just a little north of 3%, and you're looking at about $800,000.
Okay. Okay.
Good there.
Perfect.
The next question was about average starting teacher salaries and how we rank in the state. Most of our teachers come in with actually all of them come in with either a bachelor's or a master's degree. And we are very competitive. I wasn't able to compare the whole state. It was literally having to go through every contract in the state to get this. We took 2021 salary figures, and what we did was, and I think this gives us a pretty good, benchmark of where we are. What I did instead was I took all of the Durg A and Durg B towns in the state, and I took all of Fairfield County. So, with a few exceptions, there are a few oddballs here or there that, that may have been higher than us in another Durg in another county. But by and large, I think this gives you a pretty good flavor of where we are. So our starting salaries, in our Durg put us between like third and fourth. I'm sorry, within that group of Fairfield County and our Durg puts us at about third or fourth. We're about the third or fourth highest salaries. The one thing I just want to add to that is, that's not a big driver. And I think that was a conscious decision. I don't know when, at some point years ago, to try to attract talent here and retain people in Monroe, was to have a little bit higher starting salaries. When you go to the other end of our salary scale, that's where we kind of fall right in the middle of that Durg A and B and Fairfield County group, right really in the kind of the middle of the pack there. And that's really the driver in the budget. If you take our beginning teachers, we've only got 30 people on what's considered the first 6 lanes, so to speak. Those are people starting with, either no experience or up to 5 years of experience. We've only got 30 staff members in that group. Whereas the other end of our scale, we've got a lot of people, quite frankly, a lot of people my age and above. It takes a little over 15 years to reach the top of the scale. We've got, like I said, 30 in those first 6 years. We've got 180 at the end of the salary schedule. So that's where the driver is.
And that's why when people are looking at averages, and always, I hear that number thrown around a lot. And I think that was also one of the things that I wanted to get a little more transparency on, because I hear a lot of people throwing out, the average is this, and then, well, yes, if you don't have very many young ones and you're retaining your teachers, that's going to happen.
And it's true. Our average starting salaries are very competitive. It definitely, falls to the middle of the pack once you get to the other end of the scale.
Okay.
So Joe, Steve Kirsch, of the top line teachers, do you have a feel, given that we've been offering early retirements, has that been driving that top line group down, or is the retirements just being backfilled by somebody moving into those top spots?
You know, Steve, when I look at the census of our teachers, you know, we don't have a lot of, there's, like I said, there's a lot of people around my age, you know, around 50. And there's very few at that very, you know, that have the 35 years or plus. And there's very few in like the 31, 32, 33, 34, 35 year range. So, you know, I don't think I think to your point, I don't think there's a lot of people that are, you know, jumping into that. You know, we have 7 people right now. So I guess actually to your point, we'll retire a couple of people this year, but we have 7 people that have 14 years of experience that will be joining that top, you know, that top
Tier.
rung next year, that top tier.
So basically, the census is not going to change much over the next 5 years.
That's a good way to put it. The census is not going to change much in the next 5 years.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no
So
magic bullet coming.
Let me, if I can, just stick with the teachers and with the staff. Do you have a feel for how many people have been taking retirement, let's say, over each of the last 3 years?
I could get that for you, Steve. I definitely have that. I don't have it at my fingertips right now. Over the last few
Okay.
years, you know, it
I
has
mean,
definitely.
even though I watch, you know, I watch the meetings and stuff, and I know that you know you get a number of people taking it. I really don't have a feel for what those totals are per year.
Yeah, I'll definitely get that for you. Geez, I
Okay.
wish I knew off the top of my head how many we have. I don't want to put Jack and Sheila on the spot, but you guys don't know off the top of your head how many retirees we have this year, for example.
I want to say this year we have 9, but if you give me a minute, I can try and find it.
And that's not 9, that's probably 9 total staff
9
members,
total.
but not certified teachers. Or
Yeah,
administrators.
give me a second. I'll look for it.
Yeah, while you're looking for it. If not, I'll get that for you, Steve. And I
Okay.
also have, I know we have I have the historical numbers somewhere. I'll just have to dig for them a little bit. But I'll
Steve,
definitely.
this is Donna Lane. We have, for teachers, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 teachers who retired this year. And last year, just teachers, 6 that were last year.
Thank you, Donna.
And I just pulled that from our retirement celebration in May, because it listed all the teachers that have retired. So.
Thanks, Donna.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll get you like 5 years worth of data. We definitely
Okay.
had, you know, what was nice was we definitely had, you know, quite a bit of retirements, you know, in that first part of the last decade as our enrollment was decreasing. We were able to not backfill a lot of those positions. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but.
Right. That's the whole number that we've talked about, and the board has talked about. The Board of Ed has talked about in terms of staff being down while the student population is going up. Okay.
Exactly. Yep. I'll let Ron jump in on this next one again. The next one was a question about the teacher pensions and the fear of the pensions being pushed down to the municipalities and what our current liability is.
Yes.
You're on mute, Ron.
Thought I'd make it through a meeting without doing that. Sorry. So just some clarification, Mike. Did you want the overall liability, or are you looking more for the annual ADEC
Overall
payment?
liability, yeah.
The overall Monroe liability?
Yeah.
So the proportionate share of Monroe's liability is just shy of 115 million. And that's the overall plan liability that's allocated to Monroe.
Okay.
The proportionate share for this past year, the proportionate share of the expenditures and revenue that the town picked up on behalf payments made by the state was just shy of 9 million. It was just shy of 8.7 million, $8,690,000. So that's the equivalent of what the ADEC would be if it were a town plan.
Got it.
And I think the follow-up question to this was, is there any plan to address this if the state stops funding it? And quite frankly, there isn't in Monroe right now. I don't think there'd be one anywhere in the state right now to find that.
Yeah, no, I mean, and again, the good news is, I mean, I haven't heard this for probably a year and a half or 2 years. It was certainly coming up quite a bit. So I'm hoping, it's not something that's going to be pushed, but I'm just, it's obviously a long-term liability that's huge. So I don't want people to forget it's out there. One way or another, someone's going to end up paying for it. And we know how much fun our reps in Hartford have been at pushing things down to us so the time. So I don't think they can legally do it, but that doesn't mean they won't try at some point.
Yep. I know they did increase the teacher contribution I think it's been a few years now that they increased it 1% to.
Yeah, I know they've made some tweaks to try to tighten it up, but it's still a long way away from, obviously, fully funded.
I think it's at, like, Ron, I think you said it's around 51 or 52% fully funded right now.
Yeah, that's my recollection.
Yeah, I remember, and we've had a couple of good years in the markets, so I mean, I could see that because I remember it being in the 40s when we started looking at this. So at least it's heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
Okay.
The next question was about enrollment. Basically, just to try to give an enrollment summary. This is something we've been something I've learned is very difficult to try to, you think it's easy enough, just, students in, students out, but it's definitely really tricky to project, and especially in the midst of the pandemic. We saw, we've seen pretty unprecedented growth in the past. I shouldn't say unprecedented growth, but pretty significant growth in the past, past 2 years. Like I said earlier, enrollment was on the decline for most of the last decade.
Yeah,
until
I was
the
going to say.
Yeah. Yep.
I think we just got used to a declining environment, because I remember when I first started that we were going through big increases back then. So I just think it's also, we got used to something that, maybe is not the new norm.
Yeah. We had enrollment decline all the way up until the 18-19 school year. The last decrease was from the 17-18 school year to the 18-19 school year. So from the 18-19 school year, there have been increases both last in 1920, from 18-19 to 1920, and then again from 1920 to the current year, 2021. One of the things I've talked about with enrollment, and the board, we've talked about this quite a bit, is our enrollment as it stands today is somewhere between where it was in 2014, 2015, and 2015, 2016. And we had, quite a few more teachers back then. Again, we had steadily been decreasing staff, I think prudently so, with the decrease in the student population. But we had about, somewhere between 12 and 18 more teachers, compared to the number of students that we have now. And I don't think anyone could have seen, I don't think anyone saw this coming, the way it has. And every PTO that I've talked to, I talk about the yellow license plates. There's a lot of, obviously a lot of flight out of our urban, out of the, people aren't leaving New York City and coming up here. They're, getting into Stanford, Norwalk, and those folks are coming up this way.
Right.
So Joe, on that point, if I might, am I correct in feeling that the growth in students has actually picked up over the last 2 years?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not just that we're picking up students, but the rate we're picking up students has actually increased the last 2 years.
Yeah, I'd say on average about 1% a year, and that was what I used to. It was about 0.6 last year and about 1.4% this year. At the secondary level, especially at the high school, sometimes it's easier to absorb those growths. The thing that I will I usually at your meetings at every meeting, and I'll keep you abreast of what's going on with enrollment. You know, it's really tricky. Obviously, some of our biggest concerns are at the elementary level right now. We've opened up, obviously kindergarten registrations have been open for a while now. Our kindergarten enrollments are up. It's still early. It's only March. We have people that enroll all the way through until all the way through August, quite honestly. So we're still receiving the kindergarten registrations. In the meantime, you know, it's still kind of unknown, you know, how many kids kept their kids home from kindergarten last year, how many of them are going to come back to kindergarten, or how many of them either homeschooled them, want them to go to first grade, which is going to impact those, could impact those numbers, or you know, how many of them sent them to kindergarten somewhere else and they'll be going to first grade. So we're really trying to keep a close eye on those numbers. We have some pressure points for sure. There's a third grade at Stepney that's, you know, historically been a larger class. We're hoping it kind of stays where it's been. It was pretty consistent this year. Second grade at Fawn Hollow is a bubble, and it's an area for us to really keep an eye on. You know, Fawn Hollow in general, and I know there was a question, and I'll address in a little bit about you know, redistricting. Fawn Hollow has definitely seen the greatest increases over the last 2 years, but that second grade class in particular, when you think about those kids, and it's a growing, you know, it's one of the larger classes. You think about those kids next year in second grade, they will have gone through, you know, their kindergarten year, where in the spring of their kindergarten year, they're out, you know, doing remote learning, which again, they're kindergartners. And then, you know, their first grade year, they spent, you know, kind of an interrupted year between, you know, in school, hybrid, quarantining, and everything else. So it's definitely an area of concern, something for us to keep an eye on for sure, and, you know, keep an eye on those numbers. I know, you know, Lee Ansis, the principal over at Fawn Hollow, has been, you know, very concerned about those numbers. So we'll keep an eye on them. We'll keep everybody here in the loop and see how, you know, how we're going. You know,
So is your gut feel? I mean, because I've heard that's where the risk is. What's the magnitude of the risk? Are we talking one FTE at a, you know, across the elementary schools? Are we talking 2?
I would say the risk would be between 2 and 3. I would see maybe 2 at Fawn Hollow and 1 at Stepney. Monroe Elementary has it's a smaller school, and it has fewer sections, so sometimes the volatility of a few kids throws things off. But you know, I would say the biggest liability, Steve, yeah, 3. You know, more likely 1 or 2.
Thank you.
And I think that leads right into, you know, the redistricting question. It's a tricky one. You know, it's not quite as simple as, hey, take the street and divide it up or send it over. And, you know, there's a pressure point, even at Monroe Elementary, which is, you know, has the capacity at a lot of grade levels to take kids in. You know, just, you know, redistricting doesn't necessarily solve the question, because they have, you know, because it's a smaller school and there's fewer sections. In 5th grade, for example, they only have 2 sections, and that's a pretty loaded class there. And, you know, you could solve the, you know, 2nd grade problem at Fawn Hollow and create a 5th grade problem at Monroe L in the blink of an eye. And we can solve a problem this year that we, you know, exacerbate one for years ago. So it is something for us to definitely keep our eye on, and, you know, look and see if we, you know, if we need to, you know, really go into this a little bit harder. It'd probably be, you know, get some kind of a consultant, someone that looks into this and, you know, does something with demographics. I'd be afraid to just go ahead and say, all right, we're going to cut, you know, Elm Street off, and now they come here, and, you know, we solve something for 1 year and create, you know, problems down the road. The one other, you know, the one other thing that has been employed in the district in the past, it's been employed a couple of times with some success, and that is just, you know, sending something out in those pressure grades to tell the parents. I remember this happened with my own daughter. We didn't do it at the time just because we needed the convenience of the school bus. But, you know, I think it was Monroe Elementary at the time, you know, was able to take kids in, you know, and they kind of put the word out, hey, if you want to send your kid to Monroe, that's fine. If it's in an area that's close enough to a Monroe school bus, we can provide transportation. If it's not, the parents would have to transport. But that might be worth looking into to just try to relieve some of that pressure. Again, Fawn Hollow is bigger, so they can absorb a little bit more. Stepney's a little bit bigger, they can absorb a little bit more. But it's definitely a kind of a cat and mouse game. The whole time, just trying to keep chasing it to make sure we have the right number. So we're definitely keeping a close eye on the enrollment.
Okay.
I'm going to kick the next question over to Donna. I know the question was the stance of the board on the joint finance arrangement and where we are with that.
Appreciate that.
Hi, everybody. Donna Lane, Chair of the Board of Ed. So I think for the most part, the board, I would say the majority of the board is in favor of this combined position. And I will say that everybody loves Ron, and Ron is doing a sensational job. Where some board members are having some reluctance, I will say, is not in Ron's ability and not in Ron being the person, but what happens 5, 10, 15 years down the road when Ron, leaves or retires, and having something in place on how fulfilling that position down the road is going to work. So that's the one issue. So I think that's going to be in the details of us working together with the town and coming to some arrangement. And then the other question, which I know is something that Frank Lito was working on, is some board members had questions about with regard to the town charter and some possible violation or us not being in alignment to what the town charter says and how we can work around that situation. And Frank had indicated, thanks to David and Nick who went to the joint meeting, they reported back that Frank thinks that we can work around those issues, and he was looking into that in those issues. So I know we are waiting to hear back from that, but I think everybody is in favor of it and thinks, like I said, everybody thinks very highly of Ron and wants Ron to be in it. It's just a matter of what happens if Ron retires down the road and what we do.
No, obviously we need to build it for the position, not for the person. And, obviously we all have a very good comfort level with Ron, but I think what we've seen in the last year is just, the communication, the transparency, the cooperation between the town and the Board of Ed has obviously gotten better and is much easier and smoother. And there are some benefits, non-financial benefits, that I believe can come here just by having one person who's aware of both sides of it. So as wonderful as Ron is, I think we could find somebody else because nobody can't be replaced, but we have no plan on doing that anytime soon.
Oh, neither do we, but you never know with Ron. He may want to eventually retire and go somewhere nice.
No chance.
So Mike, I've got a financial question regarding this reorganization, and that is, what, if anything, is in the Board of Education budget relative to this reorganization? Is there people, is nothing in there because nothing's set in stone? Do we have anything? Do you have calculations for what those changes would be? Do we have people going from part-time to full-time? Where do we stand with the actual dollars that we would have to deal with if that becomes reality?
You want to jump on that, Ron?
Sure. Right now, Steve, it is not in the budget. So it would require transfers if it were to come to fruition.
Is this intended to be finalized before the Board of Finance, meaning we, take our final action on the budget this month?
I think I would defer to either the first selectman or the chair of the Board of Ed for that.
I think some of that also, I think we're waiting on responses from the town attorney as well.
Right.
Yeah, that's correct. You know, a lot of this is, you know, town attorney's looking to draft that MOU that we've discussed, or MOA, so that it would address a lot of the concerns that have been voiced. And you know, I think I don't want to speak for Frank. I know that he is endeavoring to get that done as soon as possible. His list is very long right now, but he certainly knows that this is important, and if we can get this finalized while the Board of Finance still has the budget, that would be preferable. So he's aware of that.
Well, even if we can't get it finalized, I'd like to get a number that we have for our consideration, and we can then decide that we either want to add it or not add it based on, you know, however we feel as a board. But I think if it's at all possible to have a you know, a decent estimate.
I think we have.
I think we should have some.
I think we have.
We have that, yeah.
Already.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I know we do. I don't know how. I don't know if they're how final they are, but they're certainly very close to a final projection, I would think.
All right, and Mike, on this reorg, and tonight's not the night to discuss it, but while we're on the subject, I'm going to be interested in salary parity for like positions from people who work directly for the school system versus who work for the municipality. And I'd like to have that as a discussion point in the appropriate budget meeting.
100%. It's always been a sticking point for me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Excellent.
Keep moving on here. The next
Please,
one.
you're rolling.
The next one is a tale as old as time. The consideration of STEM and moving it back to Jockey Hollow, and you know, the sarcastic answer is that will be done in 3 years, because that was what it was when it first started, that it was going to be you know, kind of a 3-year program, all the way back at its inception in 2011-12. You know, it was originally earmarked as, you know, a 3-year program to offset the closing of Chalk Hill. And, you know, Jockey Hollow was originally built as a 2-grade school. It really does not do great as housing 3 grades. It's just the way the school was built. If you remember, you know, for those of us who were around, you know, 5th and 6th grade was moved to Chalk Hill, and 7th and 8th grade was Jockey Hollow when the building was first opened. You know, I know the ad hoc committee that met quite a bit years ago looked at a whole bunch of different scenarios, and a lot of those included moving STEM back to Jockey Hollow. You know, it looked like we were going to get close as enrollment was declining, but the enrollment has always been the major obstacle. You know, it's always been the number, and Jack, you know, has great history with the building at Jockey Hollow. It's a principal there for, you know, I think more than a dozen years. You know, we needed to, you know, be able to maintain an enrollment of 6th to 8th grade below 700. And if you talk to Jack, realistically, that number would have to be probably, you know, at or below 675, you know, given the configuration of Jockey Hollow. You know, right now, this year, we have 784 in Jockey Hollow. Next year, you know, if we were just to move everybody up and, you know, we get nobody moving in, we're at 759. 2 years from now, if we just moved everybody up, we're still around, you know, almost 720. And again, that's not with anybody moving into the area. So I don't see us, you know, moving it back anytime soon. It has been discussed. It would be, you know, it would be great. There would definitely be, you know, there was savings when we moved it to STEM. I'm sure, you know, closing a whole building had a number of savings. There would definitely be efficiencies with moving it back into Jockey Hollow as well. It's just we're not there yet.
Okay.
The next question was on contracts and the potential for COVID-like disruptions in any upcoming contracts. And you know, both of our major contracts, food service and transportation, terminate June 30th of 2022. So they have not gone out to bid yet. But this, I mean, if nothing else, this is, we're kind of, hands are tied a little bit with the RFP for the food service contract. That's pretty much dictated by the state, but I think consideration needs to be given to both of the contracts moving forward with any kind of disruption like this, knowing the liabilities that we could potentially face.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just think, I know I brought this up just because obviously nobody anticipated this possibility of schools being closed and what the, implications of that would be. So I think it's just something now that we know this could happen or did happen, building some kind of an escape clause in to those contracts would certainly make good sense to me. And I would hope somebody at the state level, if they're the ones controlling those contracts, would think the same way. It's just, it's certainly was something beyond anyone's control, and to not be able to have some flexibility in a situation like that, this doesn't make a lot of sense.
Mike, if I can just jump in, this is Donna Lane. With regard to the food service contract, as the state gives us the parameters of the contract actually comes from the USDA. The contract is actually controlled by the federal government. So they actually are the ones who give you the exact framework of that contract. So I think we're going to have to look really hard into how much it can. And I agree with you. We need to have some sort of some sort of clause in there for a situation like this again. But we're going to also need to look at that, because that is so mandated by the federal government, the food service contract, on how that, if we can alter, how much we can alter it and how we can alter it. If you're understanding what I mean, because they're the ones who give it to the state and then the state just gives it to us. It's sort of like goes down the chain.
Got it. And what about busing? Busing is nothing like that?
No, busing would be controlled on the local level. That would be, that we would have more control over than the food service.
Got it.
I will say for all of the acrimony that the angst that the food service, some of the stuff that we've had to deal with this year, not necessarily with the food service company, but just with food in general. They have worked really, really hard to try to, control our costs. And, we were happy last month was the first month that we actually had a surplus with our in food services. So we're hoping to erase any deficit, or at least, mitigate that.
Mitigate some of it, right?
At the end of the year. I'm going to turn this. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, and the federal government, because of their program of the food reimbursement, the federal government is reimbursing us for all the meals that we serve. They're the ones paying. So like, let's say if you have a child in the elementary school, the parent is not actually paying for the lunch. The lunch is being given to the children for free. And then the federal government through the USDA is reimbursing us for those meals. And that goes until June 30th. And the other thing I just wanted to bring up, I think we can say that the bus company has been great partners, but one of the things that really tied our hands was the governor's executive order with regard to having to continue paying contracts during COVID, even when the buses or other services were not in use. So we still had to pay, even though we were not running, let's say, the transportation because of that executive order.
Right. Okay.
I'm going to turn the next piece over to Darlene and Jen. I know the question, always comes up about special education, and you create a budget. We all create the budget, but I think nowhere is it, is there more variability than in special education between the budget that you create in October and November, and where do you sit on April 1st? So I'll let Darlene jump in on that. Oh, you just muted yourself again, Dar. You're on mute for a second. There you go.
Okay. I can't see it on this one. On Zoom, you could see if you're muted or not. Um, so I'm going to start with our enrollment numbers because that does tell the story of special ed. So our October 1st number, which is the state reported number, from then until March 31st, we have an additional 23 students who qualify for special education services. Most of those students will receive services in their home school. However, we have had to provide services from outside agencies because of the number of students and the number of hours on IEPs. With the staff that we have, with our FTE, it's difficult to fill all of those hours. So we, and comply with the student programming. So that has increased our outside agency line since October. And based on what we know today, the department may need an additional $30,000 in outside agencies. And as you all know, that can change on any given day. I do want to point out that we have an average of approximately 12 PPTs a day throughout the district. This is PPT season. So from March to the beginning of June, it's our big PPT season. So we're having a dozen PPTs a day. Things change. So, we don't really know where we're going to end up. Outside agencies is a line that it's a moving target. I'm concerned about it. It could move either way. It could be that we will spend more money, or we could end up spending less money there. The other line that, when I took a look at all of our lines, the other one is tuition private. So due to the various learning models that we're in this year with COVID, we are projecting that there will be more students that will take advantage of our extended school years programs. And in the private schools, we get charged a tuition for that. So that line, our prediction is that it would be maybe an additional $12,000.
Darlene?
Yes.
Can you explain what a PT is?
Sure. It's a planning and placement team meeting for students who receive special education services. And each year you have to have an annual review for all students. We have 468 students as of March 31st. 69, I think. So we have to have those annual reviews every year. And so when I say it's our March to June is our biggest PPT season. We have PPTs all year long, but a lot of those annual reviews are due in the spring. So we go to PPT, like I said, throughout the district. We're doing like 12 a day. So in those PPTs, programs can change. We did bring students back to district this year, so that one of our lines, a few of our lines we won't fully expend this year. But in some of those cases, we have to bring other services in to help with the transition. So that's where that outside agency line comes in.
So overall, how are you think you're going to track ending up as to against budget?
For this year?
Yeah.
This year? Okay. The conversation that I just had was for the budget for next year. But yeah, this year because of COVID, we do have savings in transportation. There are quite a few savings that we do have just because we had students who did not attend their programs due to COVID. So we are working with Ron and Linda right now to try to true up those numbers and come up with a figure for you. But we're tracking. I think we're going to be fine this year.
Okay, so obviously, we did set up a contingency, but no expectation you're going to need it for this year.
No, and our concern is that next year with it, with everyone coming back fully, we don't know what we're going to face. I mean, when I think about it, we had these conversations last year at the Board of Finance that we're in these unprecedented times. We don't know what we're going to face next year, meaning this school year, but really we were in COVID most of this school year also.
Yeah, well, so you were right. We didn't know what we were going to face. So.
Right, we didn't know what we were going to face. It ended up okay for us, but then when if I mean the plan I believe around the state is that everybody's coming back full time next year, so we don't know what we'll face then.
Thanks, Dar.
Okay.
The next question was about the positions that we have lost, items that that were reduced in last year's budget, and kind of the plans to return some of these items and or positions. And I just want to highlight a lot of the things actually that you know that this budget includes. You know, this budget includes the reinstatement of quite a few positions that you know that we had lost last year. The special education position at Massac, a world language position that will actually it was a world language reduction at the high school. We're looking to hire a world language teacher back. That would be split between the high school and the middle school, but we feel that would be appropriate to get all of our programming in. We had a 6th grade teacher last year that we have reinstated in this budget to help with Mike's numbers at the middle school. Other things that the board thought was really important was interns, and bringing the interns back at the elementary schools. Those are they offer kind of our first line of defense for a lot of things, for substitutes in the mornings, but it's also a really nice pipeline. It's a great job interview when we have positions open. If we had interns that we've had in the building. A summer reading program was another reinstatement that was brought back, that is in this budget, and 2 other non-personnel items, but I think important nonetheless. When we were facing a deficit last year before COVID hit, and then coming into this year with the uncertainty of it, 2 of the areas that we really robbed were our maintenance accounts. We really went in there, and my concern is always with that. We try to make reductions as far away from kids as possible. Maintenance is an area, cutting down on equipment, supplies, repairs, all that kind of stuff. But we also know, anyone who owns a home, you could, if you don't do the preventative maintenance, the stuff grows and you got a bigger problem. So this budget, doesn't bring back everything that we had in all our maintenance accounts, but it definitely works to restore those as much as possible. And then the other big area was in professional development. We had a long-standing relationship with Teachers College out of Columbia. Did a lot of work with our reading program that paid really good dividends for us at the elementary level. This budget looks to try to pull back some of those professional development funds. So in terms of the plan, that's part of it. As you're probably aware, there's some federal funds out there right now, and we're going to try to utilize some of those to pick up some of the other things that we may have lost. Our K-5 coordinators, even if we were able to get one back, it's become increasingly obvious this year, without having one person kind of at the helm at the elementary level, especially in math. That's where that's where I think nationally everyone is seeing the biggest slide with any kind of learning loss has been in the area of mathematics. So trying to possibly use some grant funds to fund that position, or some of our interventionist positions. I mean, we're going to have kids that are going to be coming back, hopefully, knock on wood, like Darlene was saying, we're back full time next year, and we can really get kids caught up to speed as much as possible. Other maintenance and professional development, we'd love to use the grant funds for that, as well as some other opportunities that that have to address particular priorities that the state has identified: learning loss, family engagement, social emotional wellness, and the digital divide, technology. The other thing I would just add is, we're hoping that in next year's budget, there was a reduction. Our elementary schools have library media specialists. Last year, we had a retirement at for all intents and purposes, we had a retirement at Stepney that led to that position opening up, and amongst the reductions, that position was reduced, and we're hoping to be able to reinstitute that again in next year's budget.
So Joe, this is Steve.
Yep.
I'm looking at your presentation, your initial budget presentation that had several pages on all of these restorations,
Yep.
the reductions in this year and the restoration.
Yep.
What I'm wondering is if you could take an action item to put this stuff sort of in the same format you do the 5-year capital plan or the 5-year technology plan, that identifies the reductions and then has, columns showing which year you're trying to bring it back in.
Got it.
Because what I'm interested in is the items you talked about just now in items that would be used or could enhance student recovery for learning. If we knew that you wanted to bring them back a year from now, or, in the 22-23 school year, then maybe we could have a conversation as a Board of Finance whether some of those could be pulled back in to this coming school year, given other either revenue sources or other reductions where we've already taken, funds of, reduced other spending. We've taken several hundred, 100,000 or something out because we're going to pick up the tuition, the magnet school stuff.
Yep.
Maybe there's some things. So if you could put
But
it
Steve,
in.
we cannot do that. We cannot decide what goes in or doesn't go in. You have to be very careful there. That is not up to us. That is up to the Board of
We
Ed.
can ask them what they would like
We
additional money for.
cannot decide
Yes,
what
okay.
they put in the budget.
I understand. I cannot force. I cannot control what they put.
You cannot be influenced. Exactly. That is not up to us to decide
Right.
what goes back in or doesn't go back in.
Right. But
You just
I
can't.
would like to know if there's things that they need or desire, and if we can put money in, they can do
I
what
think
they
that's what the
want.
budget presented is in front of you. That's what they've sent as approved by the Board of Ed as what they desired. It's not for us to decide they need more.
Thank you both. The last piece I have here, the last question I had, and open it up for any other questions. Hopefully we can address them. I appreciate, first of all, Mike and the entire board giving us this opportunity and for sending the questions ahead of time. It definitely helps us kind of wrap
Makes it easier for everybody. Yeah. No surprises.
No, I hope not. The last one would be was just a quick discussion of the 5-year capital budget plan. I just wanted to let people know kind of the process that went through it. Ron, Jack, myself, Dan Krofsick. We went. Dan's our director of facilities. We went to each building, met with the principals, the head custodians of each building. Toured the facilities, and just to get a sense of what are the pressing needs around there. Kind of what Steve was just talking about. And we put together a 5-year plan for the Board of Education. At the first selectmen's level, we were asked to kind of prioritize those items. They were in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, but we were kind of asked to prioritize those first year items. And just as a quick review of the items that we know are going to be really important for us, that are going to be really important for us. First and foremost, I know we've talked about this before, is the teacher laptop replacements to the tune of about 160 grand. Our elementary school teacher, and obviously we've learned this year technology's critically important to everything.
Kind of important, yes.
Yeah, it helps when you're on a laptop that's not 7 or 8 years old, and that's what our elementary teachers are doing. Our IT staff does a great job. They have a term around here they use all the time. They Frankenstein everything. They take pieces from one thing and put it into another to make it work. But desperately need the laptops for the teachers. There was a lab replacements at I think both the STEM Academy and Massac that were on there. Underground storage tanks at Massac and Jockey Hollow, removing those. Currently, we're paying for lack of better words, a maintenance fee to keep them in the ground. And I just, Ron and I both kind of agree that it's, just kind of throwing, good money after bad. So, to get those out and removed, makes a lot more sense rather than continue to pay those annual fees. We have the, just from a strict ADA compliance standpoint, we have the elevator controls at Massac High School, the elevator, which is at the far end of the building that takes you from down from the aux gym to the regular gymnasium. The elevator controls, if you want to go up, you go down. If you want to go down, you want to go up, and sometimes you go nowhere. So obviously that to be fixed. There is some structural work on the outside of back of Monroe Elementary that is I think a water problem, roof problem, outer wall problem. So looking to get some work there done on the roof edge and the walls and the drainage. And then the last piece that we prioritized for this year is a towable boom lift to do a lot of our. We try to do as much, keep as much work in house as possible. A lot of tree work. We have some pretty good guys that have some experience in that. So a towable boom lift for the entire system that would also, the thought is to share it with the town as well. So if the town needed it, if the Board of Ed needed it, trying to find, more opportunities where we can do those types of things and, get a little bit more bang for the buck. There's no reason why, it should only live at live on one side of the town. And that's all I had for the questions.
Okay.
So
No, I think that's great. I think you answered everything we had sent over. Certainly, we can open it up.
Steve Kirsch, Board of Finance. So Joe, talk about, if you would, things going forward that might be needed in future years, new programs, anything for state graduation requirements. I know we've touched on just plain old student enrollment numbers, but what other kinds of functionally educational things is the district looking at, if not next year, then for the year after or so?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And I'll definitely defer to any of my any of the admins if I miss any stuff here. A couple things. I'm glad you brought up graduation requirements because graduation requirements are increasing. I think our graduation requirements, I don't know if Steve is on right now, but they go up next year to 25 credit. The class of 2022 needs to have 25 credits to graduate. So that has had an impact on us. The state, sometimes, with all good intentions, mandates specific courses and doesn't realize that they, or mandates, extending the number of credits that you need to graduate, don't realize that has, impacts to staffing and obviously to salaries and budget. So graduation requirements is a big one. What I would say for programming, I'd say TBD. We met this afternoon, this morning as an administrative staff and looked at, started talking about, coming out of the pandemic, what is it that our kids are going to need? How are we going to address the learning loss that has happened, across the board? And what are some programs that we can offer kids, whether we're talking about some summer programming. And again, this is where some of that, grant money may be helpful in terms of addressing learning loss. In previous years, or every year, we have an extended school year program with special education. It seems like this year, it would make a lot of sense to really get a really vibrant extended school year program that is extended to other kids as well, and it's not doesn't have to be just for special education students, but to help get kids caught up, academically, socially, emotionally, getting reattaching those relationships that they had. So that's going to be, I think, a big emphasis moving forward. Folks, am I missing any big programmatic things that you might be thinking of? I don't know from a cost perspective. I know one of the big initiatives in the district right now is working on what's called the Vision of the Graduate, which is a K-12 I don't want to call it a program, but basically, determining what are the knowledge, skills, and dispositions our kids need to have when they graduate, and embedding that in the curriculum from not in ninth grade, but in kindergarten. And what do we want kids to know and be able to do? And what does that look like when they're in kindergarten, third grade, fifth grade, eighth grade, and then obviously when they graduate. So I know that will be a big initiative. I don't know if there's a big price tag to that. But that is definitely going to, that should be driving a lot of, some pretty big decisions down the road.
So two questions, and I don't know whether it's big dollars. Just things like, is there going to be an increase in things like textbooks that we may have put off buying, or supplies that you may have put off buying, that you're going to want to increase at a greater than normal rate in the year following now? That's one question. And the second is Masick being certified or recertified?
Yes, I'll answer the second one
Is there any
first.
cost to that?
Yep. The Masick will undergo part of the whole Vision of the Graduate work that's being done is tied into the accreditation process through the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. Masick, their 10-year, we'll call it evaluation, will take place this October. They had an 8-year follow-up, which was done obviously last year before everything went haywire. And we have had some recommendations that the team has been working on, some self-identified recommendations that the team has been working on. And the accreditation team will come back in October and go through the school. I think we're in a really good place for them when they do return. So yeah, we are getting ready for reaccreditation next October. In terms of textbooks, not as much. Supplies, we did try to. I don't know if we really cut our supply lines down for this current year. And we tried to build some of that stuff back into our budget for next year for sure. Especially some of our classroom libraries, especially at the elementary school and the middle school. Just trying to give the kids various texts to read, and obviously the importance of literacy at the younger ages. And if we can find engaging books that are just right for kids, the better. Programmatically though, Sheila, Jack, Mike, Jen, Darlene, did I miss anything? I hope I didn't.
No,
Donna
I
Lane
think,
here. Yeah,
Oh.
I was just going to jump in and say, sorry. I was just going to jump in and say one of the things that is on our radar is right now, the state is actually looking at even enhancing the graduation requirements and adding 2 more. One is in computer science and as a mandatory class, and the other one is in personal finance. So depending on the outcome, and that they just left the education committee. So depending on the outcome of that and when they implement that, because they are talking possibly putting it with the class of 23, possibly not. Those would be 2 other areas that are on our radar that we're concerned about, because obviously we would need to increase capacity because those are electives now, and if those are mandated as everybody needs to take them as a graduation requirement, then that would be something, but that's for the horizon. That would not probably be for this coming year, but that would be looking out maybe a year or 2 depending on what the effective date is.
So Donna, when you say increased capacity, are you talking additional staff to teach those, or something else?
Absolutely, because I mean,
Okay.
in personal finance now, the personal in the CTE area, you're certified as CTE. So could we pull people from other areas? Possibly, but then that would affect our students taking electives in other areas, such as, let's say, marketing or accounting, in those areas to teach personal finance, because everybody would have to take that as a graduation requirement. So it really depends on how we're going to manage that. Are we going to say, hey, we're changing these teachers to be personal finance teachers, and we're no longer going to have classes or the electives in the other areas for students, or are we going to need to increase staff for that personal finance? So that's up in the air depending on where this falls with the state and how the state rolls this out, and does this actually come to fruition that these are requirements for graduation.
Thank
May
you.
I add to that? Sheila Casanelli from the Board of Ed. In addition to the two that Donna mentioned, there's also another piece out right now about K-5 literacy programs. And they're supposedly going to be coming up with 5 options, and districts have to use one of them. So I'm not sure if what we're currently using as a major resource, because we don't necessarily have a program to teach elementary language arts. We use a lot of variety of resources, but our primary resource is the Teachers College Units of Study, as you know, Mr. Cobbs had already said. So if that does come to fruition, that'll be an investment for us if we have to purchase a program for our K through 5 students in literacy. And then additionally, there's, with the high school requirements, there are some courses taking a look at how that's going to play out with MASIC. Are we, with the number of STEM classes that a student will need, they could end up having some impact over the next couple of years. But I know that MASIC and the SILs are working very carefully to lay out all the options and do it with the least amount of fiscal impact, but there could be impacts there as well.
And I think too, Steve, one other piece is just to keep it, you know, one of the areas that I think we're going to need to rebuild a little bit of momentum on is the some of our performing arts and even some of our you know, more hands-on elective courses that really took a hit this year. You know, some of those classes did not meet the way they you know, obviously couldn't do a lot of the things that we've done in the past because of, you know, all of the constraints put on us this year. So definitely going to want to, you know, try to, you know, rebuild those things back up. Those are the things that, you know, get kids excited to come to school, and we want to make sure that it stays that way.
Joe, you might
Well,
want.
did I hear something about technology for CAD CAM classes being refreshed or something?
I'm not sure, Steve. Not from me, but I can ask Mark Schwartz at MASIC.
Yeah. Is there anybody else who has questions on the budget stuff for this year in front of us? I think I'm good. John, you're good? I see you're nodding.
Yeah, John Oszewski, Vice Chair. No, that was a great presentation. All the questions were answered very well, I thought, very thoughtfully. And no, I appreciate all the detail. It's very helpful for us to get our hands around everything. Thanks very much.
Thank you guys again. I appreciate it.
Anybody else? Dane? Anna? Rebecca? Oh, we got them here?
I don't have anything, but thank you for all the information. This was great.
No, Donna Lynn, thank you for the information. I have no further questions.
All right.
Steve Kirsch, no further questions, and of course, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Great, guys. Well, I think we're pretty much wrapped it up. If anything does come up in the next couple of weeks, we can certainly reach out. But right now, I feel like we're in pretty good shape.
Thanks
Someone
again. We'll be back on. I'll be back on next Thursday too, if there's any.
You're always hanging around. I know. We appreciate that.
Thank you all.
All right. Somebody want to make a motion?
Steve Kirsch, motion to adjourn.
Wonderful. Thank you all, guys. See you all.